Welcome to my 12th video for the still the third chapter of this ActionRPG project. And in this video, we're going to add sound effects. Definitely opens the door for kind of adding a lot of immersion to the game. And I'm not going to add all the possible sound effects you could add, because that would actually take a very long time. But I'm going to add some of the core type of things that we do need to be concerned with. So basic attacks, being hit, death noises, some ranged attack noises, so that you can kind of see how it's done, and then add some extra sounds for enemies of your own. So I'm going to do this with a like a separate script altogether, because what I want to do is make as universal of a system as possible so that I can reuse it very easily, and so that's going to be the plan. So inside of my scripts core folder, I'm going to create another C# script, and I'm going to call this sound player. I probably could call it sound. I don't think that's going to collide with anything, but sound player sounds good because it plays sound effects. And so let's open that up, and it takes us here. So the first cool thing that we can do is add a require components header here, and what that would do is whenever we attach this script to something, it's going to also forcibly attach a audio source as well to guarantee whatever thing has this script also has an audio source. And so up here, let's define a block of so this is kind of a weird setup for it, and what I'm going to do is actually just make a bunch of audio clips for different names. So like, let's do a series of attack ones here. Well, let's actually do some kind of core like health ones. Let's do hurt first, and then we'll do death. You can just use commas to separate them like that. So we'll do a melee attack. Now for those, for some things that, such as my magic charge, I'm going to call this audio underscore magic charge level passive. So that's like the background noise that it makes when you're charging it up. And then another one called audio underscore magic charge level, or charge launch level. I'm using the word level to indicate that that's actually going to be an array. So this is called magic charge passive level and magic charge launch level. Let's put the audio prefix here. The reason why I'm putting audio in front of all of these is so that when I actually use the autocomplete in Visual Studio, it's going to group all these in the same area, so it's actually very easy for me to see where they are. Then let's put in some audio clips more pertaining to the magic. Audio underscore magic charge level up, so that there could be like some kind of whooshing sound whenever your character reaches a new tier of magic. Audio underscore magic explode. So that could be like the fireball explosion. Audio underscore magic impact, the noise that it makes when it just hits the wall. And audio underscore magic pass through. So because the big wave can hit multiple things, we could add a sound effect for that too. Then we'll do some for range, audio clip, audio underscore ranged launch, and then maybe audio underscore ranged impact. And so that could just be some basic audio clips to get us started, and then we need the core component here, which is going to be an audio source. I'll just call it sound for simplicity. So we have a whole bunch of just audio clips here that could be used, and now a lot of these are going to be null because we may not define a lot of these for every single thing that this gets attached to. So first thing is to connect the audio source. So sound equals get components audio source. And then that's going to link to the audio source there. We actually do not need the update method because this isn't going to actually utilize update. So we're going to do our first method here, and this is called play one shot. And it's passed in a parameter of an audio clip, just called clip. A one shot is audio that won't interrupt other audio effects, and you can like launch 100 of them, and like one single audio source can play 100 one shots, and they'll all stack on each other. So one shot audio is a clip that doesn't stop or interrupt other clips. It will still be stopped if you run the audio.stop command. It will stop playing all your one shots, but it's able to kind of play multiple sounds out of one sound source. So if clip is not equal to null, so we'll add a little bit of protection here so we don't accidentally play clips that don't exist. Sound.play one shot clip. If we wanted to, we could actually make this type a Boolean, so we could actually do like a little bit of investigating if it's actually playing sounds. And a lot of methods would do stuff like this. So if the sound failed to play for whatever reason, it would return false, but if it's successfully played, it'll return true. The other one that we're going to use a bit would be what I call play passive. And this is something that is going to actually use the clip feature of an audio source, meaning it's stoppable. There's only one copy of this being able to be played at a time. And so play passive is going to be a version of this method that will not interrupt an existing sound effect. So if clip is not equal to null and sound.isPlaying is false. So if it's not currently playing something, then we're going to set the clip equal to this parameter clip, and we're going to play it. And then, we made this Boolean so we can still return true. And if it failed to do any of that, it'll return false. So again, we can kind of get an idea, like, was this method working? So play passive plays a audio clip. Basically, you can only have one of these at a time. Only if audio is not currently playing something. So this would be good for like maybe like a jet engine sound effect or like an engine sound. So like while the engine's on, it would be playing this, but if it's already playing a sound, it's not going to play a sound. So it's the purpose of play passive. We'll add a simple stop method. And all this is going to do is say sound.stop. And it's going to set the clip to null just so that there's no audio clip kind of loaded into it. And lastly, we'll do a play method, public bool play. And this is going to be like the one we just did, play passive, but it just won't care. It'll play it regardless. So if clip is not equal to null, then we will do sound.clip equals the incoming clip and sound.play. And we'll return true. So this will play it regardless of if it was already playing something or not. So you'd have to be careful that you only trigger this once. I'm not actually getting into playing around with the looping things. And this one's only one at a time as well. So it's very similar to play passive, except for it will start playing if there was an audio clip already playing. So like play passive actually will return, like play passive won't work if there's a one shot still playing because it counts as still playing for that case. So let's save our audio player script. If you need to pause the video to grab these. And you may, as you start doing audio, may need to tweak some of these or just modify these to fit the needs of whatever audio you're trying to play. Like if you wanted to do background music, you may even want to kind of look at how could you refine this to do that, or just make a whole nother class for background music. All right, so this is set up. And let's go attach it to the player and start configuring what kind of sound effects the player might want. Which also does lead me to wanting to even import my sound effects to begin with. So inside of our files, you should have downloaded a sounds zip file. And inside that zip file, we have some different things. So I'm going to take that and I'm just going to drag it directly into this assets folder so it makes its own root directory. And it's going. And so we can see that it has successfully done that. When we kind of come down here to sounds, we can see that now there's actually some sounds inside of here. So let's go to the player prefab. And I'm going to drag and drop this new core script called sound player to the player. What you'll notice is it's going to attach onto it an audio source automatically. And you can see that it added an audio source and then it added this script, which is interesting. So a few things about the audio source. Let's turn off play on awake, because that means it just plays the sound effect immediately when it starts, which is useful sometimes, but not in this case. Volume, 1 is actually kind of pretty loud for Unity, so I'm just dropping it to 0.5. And I'm not going to really play with any other effects. You could get into audio mixer groups, which does allow you to group things into voices and sound effects and ambient sounds. But again, that's a little bit beyond the scope of this video. So here's all those audio clips that we had started making for the player. So let's start assigning sound effects to them. So I've got a player hurt sound effect, and I guess that'll have to do for both player hurt and player death. Melee attack, that sounds like a job for the weapons subfolder. And I want to bring in this sword attack. Now, audio passive charge level, I want to have 4 different entries to that array. I want to have 4 different entries to the charge launch level. And so now I can see that this array is size 4. And you can see that I do have a magic charge for each level. So I'm just going to drag these into the passive ones. This is the sound effect it's going to play when you're charging up a fireball. The launch levels, I don't have one for element 0 because remember, there is no fireball that comes out at level 0. And that's also why we made it null, because in this case, I don't even need to worry about it. It will not play it if it's null. So it's not going to crash or anything. Level up sound, I have magic rank up. Now, magic explode's probably not going to matter because that's actually going to be more on the actual fireball itself, but I'll put it there anyway. Magic impact, again, that's probably not going to matter here because that pertains to the fireball itself. So these ones that I'm setting right now aren't going to actually do anything. And I don't have a ranged attack, so I don't need those. So I've set up a bunch of sounds. And I've got all the components I really need. All I've got to do now is script the player to use these sounds. So let's open up our player.cs file and let's add in a new section here, extra audio. And all we need to do is add a sound player, and I'm just going to call it sounds. It can be private, it doesn't need access to the outside. We're going to attach it. And so that'll be sounds equal get components sound player. Notice I'm not getting the audio source because sound player is the script that handles the audio source. And the beauty of this is like we're not going to have to really change much code for monsters or anything. It's all handled by this sound players class. So to use it, we just have to go to places where we think sound effects are going to need to occur. So that could be, let's think about spawn melee attack. That sounds like a good candidate for placing a the melee whoosh. So inside of here, we're going to look and we're going to say sounds dot. This is a play one shot. Open parenthesis. Now the clip we want is on sound, so we say sounds dot, and then we start typing audio, and you can see that it's going to auto-complete all these different fields. Well, I know I want my melee attack, so I'm just going to go to that and auto-complete that sound. And then boom, it's going to play the melee sound effect. And if we had monsters needing melee sound effects, same idea. It would just be audio_melee attack. Doesn't matter if it's a player or a monster, because the monster is going to have a different set of sound effects attached. And so that's going to be how we do some simple stuff like that. And let's see. So that's the melee attack. Let's think about putting some regions here. Let's go region health, and let's just call it health. Check health and hit, I think, need to go into there. And hit's actually a good place for us to have some sound effects. So let's go in and add extra play hurt sound. And so sounds dot play one shot. And we want to play the, whatchamacallit? Sounds dot audio. There should be a hurt here. All right. And so now if the player takes damage, the player will make some kind of like hurt noise. And then also we probably should stop the sound effect of and I think probably the easiest way to do that is just if is charging. I have to be careful, we might need to do it before there. If is charging sounds dot stop. Let's just put that right before we disable is charging right there. So if we get hit, it's going to disable that charging up sound, and then it's also going to play the hurt sound. So hit is done. So far we've done sound effects in the spawn melee attack, and we've done sound effects in the hit area. Now we probably want to take a look at, well, let's see how I group these in the enemy. Update behaviors is what we called it. I feel like hit flash and update stun state need to go in there. And then update cooldowns. Just a little bit of organization for this. I'll probably organize it a little bit more in between this series and the next series, so it's a little bit sort of, I'm trying to do some of this on camera so you can maybe organize a little bit more. Moving, update the animations in there as well. And probably one more for attacks, because I'm going to need to get to my attacks anyway. So that means spawn melee attack, end attack animation need to go in there. And I think I'm going to also grab these update melee attack and update ranged attack. That's probably going to be an important part. Oops. Make sure it's inside the end region. Boom. All right. So of these, this one actually, the melee attack one doesn't need a sound effect because there's no sound effect that plays when we begin this start. So I'm not going to need any inside of this. We have that when it spawns the box. But this update ranged attack, we do need to start putting some sound effects. So let's hit save, and let's just at least hear the sword swoosh, just to make sure it's working. And I believe it's recording my desktop audio, so you should be able to hear that. This doesn't make any sound effects, but our player does make a hurt noise. And so now we've got some simple sounds. Let's get the fireball making some noise. And so that's going to be inside of update ranged attack. So this first one, when I first press the button down, there doesn't need to be anything except for maybe beginning that charge noise. So let's, right here, extra play magic charge sound. So right when I start pressing the button down, we want it to kick in and start playing that. So that's going to be sounds dot play, and then I want this as a play passive. I probably could just do it as play. Let's see if that works. Sounds dot audio magic charge passive level, and we're gonna put in range charge level, which will be 0 in this case, but that way I can at least just copy and paste this. So we first hold down the left button, which means we need to begin that sound effect in the background of charging up an attack. So then this is if I'm still holding it down and I'm charging up. So we need to play different things whenever we reach a new rank of it. So we will go through here and we'll play a new audio for it. But let's stop the previous. And if we want to play a one-shot, we could do play one-shot sounds dot audio underscore magic charge level up. That'll play a whooshing sound. I may cut that out because I don't really like how that sounds. Hit save. And then we just need to stop these sound effects when we release the button. So when we let up on the button, we need this background sound to stop. And so right here, we'll do our extra play magic launch sound. And so what that's going to be is we want to stop other sound effects. So we're going to say sounds.stop and then sounds.play one shot and sounds.audio underscore magic launch level ranged charge level. So based on whatever charge it is, it'll just auto-complete that array. If it happened to be 0, well, that's going to be null, but we programmed this method to be okay if it's null. It's not going to do anything. We can hit save there. All right, so now our player should have all these sound effects. And we've got some sounds, although we're not getting any on the launch here. So let's take a look at maybe what's going wrong with that. So we stop the sound here. It is possible that maybe those are causing it to stop. Let's see. Interesting. Let's tweak this to see if this works better as play passive. And I'm changing the other one as well. That's weird. Well, I guess I might have to just add an extra thing on the end of this video and I investigate that a little bit more. But it should be hitting the sound effect. I guess I have one last guess. I think I see it. Right here. It's setting range charge level back to 0. So as a result, it's always playing the 0 sound effect. So we need to move that up in front of where we 0 out the charge level. It's got to recompile. And we should be back in business. Unity wants to reopen. And now those don't have sound effects because we haven't put a sound thing on the whatchamacallit yet. We haven't put any sound effects on the actual projectiles. So let's go do an enemy and set those sounds up, and then we'll start looking at projectiles. So that means we need to go visit the blob prefab. So let's double click the blob. And blob is going to need us to give it a sound player. And so it attaches it. So again, we're going to turn off play on awake and maybe drop the volume down a little bit. And give it some sound effects. So I have a few further inside of sounds here. We've got a hit and a death sound. So let's give it audio hurt and blob death. And let's go code the enemy to make use of those. The player's stuff's a little bit more organized now. So we're jumping over to the enemy script, and we want to make it play some hurt noise, and so that's probably going to be under health and damage. So under check health, well actually we need to make the script first. So we will add it right after AI state enum. We'll call this extra audio variables. And then we've got to include it inside of start. And so we'll say that sounds equals get components. I always forget the name of it, sound player. And that should link it together. Hit save. Now we just have to go inside of the blob, well, inside of the enemy script, and add sound effects where it would have sound effects. Now this does mean that any enemy that we add is going to need to require to have this script. They can all be null if we wanted to, the sounds, and it would be fine. So inside of hit here, we want to, oh, that's searching for players, but right here. We'll play the hurt sound effect. Sounds dot play one shot. Sounds dot audio hurt. And remember, if this is null, it's not going to be a big deal. It's just not going to play anything. So if the monster doesn't have a hurt sound effect, we don't crash. Save that. And then inside of check health, I want to do the same thing. And this is not going to work because you'll see why. Extra play death sound. And so this is audio underscore death. And you might actually kind of see what's about to happen here. So the blob should be playing a hurt sound, and it has a death sound. However, what's going to happen is when it runs out of health, it's just going to it'll disappear, which means it won't play its sound. And so we've got some sounds here. The skeleton actually, you get a null reference exception because it doesn't have an audio thing to it. You can actually just fix that super quickly if you just attach the sound player to the skeleton like this. Even though it doesn't actually have any sounds, turning off play on awake and fixing the volume, even though it doesn't have any sounds, it will still work because it has the component and it's set to do nothing if the sound clips were null. And so that fixes that error. So the problem is the blob is dying at the same time it's trying to play its sound effect. So what we could do here is a little bit of checking. So if it needs to play the sounds, let's say if sounds dot audio death is not, well, let's go if it's null. If it's null, then just delete the enemy. Meaning it didn't have a sound effect for death, so who cares? Let's just go through and do this. Otherwise, we need to kind of come up with a clever way to approach this. So sounds.audiodeath.length, we're going to need that. Well, let's disable a lot of our components. So we're going to say get components enemy dot enabled equals false. And then we're going to also try to disable as many other pieces that we can as well. So we have get components collider 2D dot enabled equals false. So pretty much like what we did for like those projectiles. Body dot simulated equals false. What else? Sprite renderer. Sprite renderer dot enabled equals false. I think those are the core ones that we just need to shut off, and then we will call destroy this dot game object, and we'll destroy it after the audio clip should be finished, where we're going to get the length of the death sound effect and play that. Alright, so save. Now, bearing in mind, you'll have to redo it for the skeleton because the skeleton does overwrite check health. So the skeleton does have a slightly different way of approaching this. So we jump in, and let's see. We hit a slime. One more hit should kill it. And it made a sound effect, and it, you know, actually finished that sound effect. So you could probably go through and do the same for the skeleton. So I'm not going to really do much with the skeleton, except for mention that when you set up the skeleton sound effects, you don't need to delete it. You just have to play it. So the skeleton's actually kind of easy. You just take this idea of playing this sound effect, and you would attempt to play it during its check health right here, because it doesn't disappear, it sticks around. So if it can play it, it'll play it, but if not, it, you know, shouldn't hurt anything. And so that is updated and fixed for that. So that's, if you want to set up some attacks, you can also go through and set up some different attacks when it plays its attack animations and such. So I want to look at projectiles now. So we're going to do the player fireball. And then this will be the last one that we do, and I'll do the rest of the sounds off camera. So in the next video that we see, all my stuff will have its sound effects. So the fireball, kind of annoyingly, we do have 3 different prefabs for it. So let's drop a sound player on here. Now, we don't need to really kind of declare a lot, because we only need to worry about the explode sound and the impact sound and maybe the pass-through sound. So this is a weapon. This fireball, we can listen to the sounds to sample them. So I kind of feel like when this thing expires, it needs the high-pitched one. So we're going to give it a impact sound of hit high. And it doesn't have an explosion, so I don't need to worry about that. It could have a pass-through sound, too. We can give it the same thing. And the launch actually comes from the player. So not really a big thing there. And that's ranged anyway. So, and then explode, why not? We'll just give it the explosion effect. And so we need to do that for all of our different fireballs. We need to go through and set up that script. So I'm going to go to the fireball level 2. I'm going to attach the sound player to it. I probably also need to remember to turn off play on awake and set the volume back down to 0.5. So this fireball, it's going to use we can do hit high again. Upon impact, it'll do hit high. It's going to need an explosion sound and a pass-through. We'll do hit high again if it has a pass-through effect. So that one's done. Let's go back to Fireball 1 real quick, and then also make sure we turn off Play on Awake. And then for Fireball 3, we'll do the same thing. We're going to give a sound player to it. Turn off Play on Awake. Volume will be dropped to 2.5. And it needs a few things. It needs pass-through will be Fireball Burn. Fireball 3 Burn. Fireball Explode if it hasn't explode. And Hit Deep for its impact. So with those things set, let's go to the script for the fireball and get it to do the same thing. And we'll add its the sound player to it. And inside of start, we'll link it. So sounds will equal get components sound player. And this fireball, we need to go kind of pay attention to where it might actually do some stuff. So when it hits enemies, we calculate this impacts left thing. So I think Fireball level 3 is the one that actually does have these. So we'll do if impacts left is greater than 0, sounds dot play one shot, sounds dot audio magic pass through. And actually, that would actually make sense for any of them. Just in case we add the ability. If we add the ability for it to, for any of the fireballs to get the ability to pass through. Because most of them should be at 0 because they only hit one thing. Now, here, when we actually apply the damage, that's not going to need a sound effect. We might need one here during impact, because impact is where we end some stuff. So we'll do sounds dot magic impact. Oops, sounds dot play one shot magic impact. And then we'll do the same thing for the explosion. Right here where we got the explosion, we're going to and I believe that is just called magic explosion. And so now our projectile has all these different sounds that it should be able to do. So let's save it and let's see what that does. And so you could take this idea and apply it to like the enemy projectile, the bone. It could have some kind of whirling noise or a thunk when it hits a wall. And so we'll go minimize that. And we'll hit play. And so you can hear that it has a effect when it hits. They actually each all have different ones. Now that one's interesting because I think it's cutting off due to the thing deleting itself. So it hits, and it's not sticking around long enough to finish playing that animation, which is interesting. It's not a huge deal though, because the animation finishes and the animation's what's sending the delete command to this object. Hit by those stupid blobs. And so that has all those different sounds now too. And so our sounds are working pretty well. I might eventually kind of off camera play with some of the durations for when things get deleted in order to get those sounds sounding a little bit better, but that's the general premise. And now you've seen it done for projectiles, players, and enemies. You could take that idea and run with it and essentially kind of give anything this sound script, and then you can add more functions to it. You can look into doing looping sounds. You can have it to play music. So it should set up kind of the beginning for a lot of interesting things that you can do. And so I might actually add some of those off camera, so when you join me for the 4th series, I might have some more sound effects. But thank you for watching, and when you check the next video, we're going to begin our final chapter, which is interacting with the environment. So persistent data, switches, doors, keys, hazards, terrain effects, things that can make the environment more interesting and actually set up some idea of progression to the maps. So I'll catch you for the next video.